recording. Okay. You are listening to episode 5 of Hurricane Warning, the podcast. I'm your host, Mike McCoy, and every guest that I have, I consider to be an awesome guest. But this time, this is really, really special, and I really, really think that everybody listening is going to enjoy the next half hour or so, because I have Green Beret and former NFL long snapper for the Seattle Seahawks, also long snapper for the University of Texas Longhorns, Nate Boyer, on the line with me right now, and I'm really, really thrilled to be talking to him. Nate, good afternoon, man. How you doing?
I'm good, Mike. How are you doing, brother? Thanks for having me.
Not bad. No, thank you for making time for this. I really do appreciate that, and I'm doing good. Can't complain. Almost done with summer courses, and one more semester till I'm done for getting this bachelor from the dream school that I've always wanted to go to, man. So I'm not too bad.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you about that. How are things right now down at the U with everything going on in the country? From a social justice perspective, but also just from a COVID-19 perspective.
We are really blessed to have Julio Frank as our president here, because with his medical background, he has come up with a bunch of really, really good ideas to help make, the students, staff, and, faculty feel safe. So we're returning to campus in a few weeks. There are options for students to have 100% remote classes, 50-50, or 100%, on-campus in-person classes. They've made modifications to the classrooms for social distancing. Obviously, everybody's on campus is required to wear a mask. And there's more details that I'm not aware of yet. He emailed everybody with a video that I haven't looked at it yet, but he feels safe. So if he feels safe, I'm okay in terms of that. But the campus has pretty much been not closed, but empty since March, since everybody was sent home. So in terms of, everything else going on in the world, I really can't answer that fairly, but I will say this, everybody's behind, this movement and everything that's just going on from what I see from the outside looking in. So that's encouraging.
That's good to know. My sister-in-law is actually from Miami.
Right.
And, yeah, so it's a cool place. I went down there for my brother and hers wedding. They actually did out in Key Largo, which was a really cool place. But Miami's a cool little town. I've been there a few times now. I like it.
I love it down here, man. An international city. Been here my whole life, and we'll see what the next couple of years holds. But I know you don't have a lot of time, so I want to get to this. And again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Mike McCoy on Hurricane Warning, episode 5, and we're here with Nate Boyer. So Nate, man, I gotta ask you, because I know you're from Tennessee, grew up out in California, grew up a 49ers fan, as myself, still am. I know February was probably hard and still kind of getting over it, but
well, it wasn't our first Super Bowl we lost. We lost another one a few years before that, so it's all right. We'll get back.
On a 2 Super Bowl losing streak doesn't sound good, but you dressed up as Joe Montana for 2 Halloweens in a row as a child. How did it feel, or was it hard at all putting on a Seahawks uniform, knowing how much trouble they give in San Francisco to that point? I've always wanted to ask you that, actually.
It was not hard at all, bro. just to get that opportunity was really special. And yes, we're bitter rivals. I mean, even right before the year before I got up there, it's like or I guess maybe it was two years before I got up there. 2 years before I got up there in the NFC Championship game. And we've got that famous play with Crabtree and Richard Sherman, who's now a Niner, in the end zone, right? And so I had that opportunity. I got a call from both at the time they were in St. Louis still. It was the St. Louis Rams or the Seattle Seahawks I had to choose between on draft day. And I wasn't drafted. I was a free agent. So sometimes you have a bit of a choice if you have 2 teams that want to sign you as a free agent.
Right.
So I laid it all out there, and I looked at the stats, and I looked at the cities, and I thought about it. And honestly, it still would have been a long shot, but I would have maybe had a little better chance to possibly make the team in St. Louis. Still, like I said, probably a huge hurdle to navigate, but just because, that they were 4-12 the year before and all that. But then I looked at Seattle, and I looked at the Seahawks, and I looked at that team. from Marshawn Lynch to Russell Wilson to Doug Baldwin to Luke Wilson to Michael Bennett, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas,
God.
Richard Sherman. I mean, just like a squad. And I'm missing a bunch of people, and I apologize. I'll say John Ryan, the greatest punter ever, one of my good buddies. But I looked at that, and then they'd been to back-to-back Super Bowls.
Yep.
And they just had that swag, man. And I thought, you know what? All things being equal, the odds of this lasting past training camp are not good anyway. So I'm going to go with the tougher climb. You know what I mean? I'm going to take the high road, the tougher road. And not that the St. Louis Rams were a low road in any way, but
right.
That sort of helped my decision. And I talked to my dad, and I talked to my agent, and I talked to everybody, and almost everybody was like, except for maybe one or two people, everyone was like Seattle. And I only had about half hour to decide. So
wow,
that's what I did, man. And it was I don't regret it. Don't regret it one bit. I would have loved for it to be the Niners, of course, but I'm not complaining.
No, of course not. And you know what? I probably would have made the same decision too. Like you said, at the end of the day, it comes down to winning. They just, had a couple Super Bowl appearances, and why not? That's the ultimate goal. So, okay. I was just wondering because, I'm so hardcore in my fandom sometimes that it's just like.
It's being a fan can be blinding, bro.
Yeah, you're right, man. Okay, fair enough. Some interesting fact that I read about you, which I find amazing. You decided to pick up and go backpacking all by yourself throughout Europe and Central America. How long were these adventures? How long did they last? And what made you want to do that?
Yeah, typically when I did something like that, when I was just going backpacking, it was just somewhere between, 2 weeks and 6 weeks at the most. And a lot of that was happening in my early 20s. And, and I didn't go to college right out of high school,
right,
like a lot of people do. And I know you can relate to that.
Yep.
And, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I struggled with direction and purpose and all that. And really, I didn't start traveling until after 9/11, ironically.
Wow.
But when 9/11 happened, it kind of got me thinking a little bit more about the world, what little I knew, but I was just so shocked that something like that would happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I kind of lived in this bubble. And so I wanted to explore and I wanted to learn. And eventually those travels, those backpacking trips led to relief work that I did in the Darfur, in the Darfur region of Sudan in Africa. And that trip really totally changed my life.
Wow.
And that's what eventually led me to the military. So really it's kind of started with just taking that first trip, taking that first backpacking trip out to Europe was the first one. I went to 7 or 8 different countries, and I just was riding on the trains and sleeping on the trains.
Oh my God,
staying in hostels, and I was just kind of on my own. And I had a couple buddies that were over there on a tour group thing, and I would meet up with them randomly every few days in a town or something. But I was just kind of doing my own tour group, so it was cool.
Much respect, man, because you picked the right time to do it right out of high school, early 20s. Why not? But the experiences that you must have, experienced, for lack of a better phrase, those must have been amazing. And I have huge respect for anybody that could do that, because although it's something I've always wanted to do, I really don't know how the heck. You don't plan for anything like that, right? You just kind of go by the wind.
You have a loose plan. You have an idea, because I flew into Paris and I was flying out of London, and basically I was heading south from Paris. And then I was going to head southeast and kind of dip into to Italy, and then head up through Austria and Germany and Amsterdam, and then back into Paris, then back into France, I should say, and Belgium, and then over to England. And it was just kind of as long as I get back to London by the time my flight takes off,
right,
leaving here, I'll be good. And I you could get these train passes. I don't know if they still have them. If you were under 25 years old, it was super cheap. It was like a 2-week train pass.
Wow.
That only cost maybe $200 or something. But you could jump on and jump off any train going all over those countries, between countries and stuff. So just imagine, how cheap that travel can be. Amazing. And so you're going from, you go from Paris, and then you're going down to south of France, and then going down to Rome, and then Venice and Florence, and up into, like I said, into Austria and Germany, all these places. And it was like that whole trip with the flights, maybe $1,000. I don't even know. It might not even have been that because I was living such on the cheap. And I was out there for 2 weeks, you know, and Western Europe's not cheap. So,
Right.
you know, you just figure it out, especially when you don't have the means anyway. You're just like, well, you know, I guess I'm eating a baguette and whatever. Like, that's what's happening.
Amazing, man. Again, those experiences, they must, I mean, obviously lasted you a lifetime and changed your life. So props on that one.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that, well, we were talking before when we were setting this up, how you have a personal relationship with head coach Manny Diaz here at the U. So obviously it's because of the time that you spent over at the University of Texas from, what was it, he was at Texas from 2011 to 2013, which was right smack in the middle of your time there. You weren't
Yep.
coached by him because obviously he was the defensive coordinator, but how was it being around him? I mean, you were obviously one of the older guys on the team, closer in age than anybody else was. Did you guys ever have any in-depth conversations, maybe like away from football, or can you describe the
Yeah.
relationship, how it is
And you know
today?
what? Honestly, he did coach me a bit because I was a safety when I walked on, and
Oh,
I was
okay.
never I was definitely not good enough, fast enough, athletic enough to ever play or to ever
Okay.
start as a safety. That's why I started long snapping. So he would, and the defense did a lot of drills together. And then my defensive backs coach, Dwayne Aquino, who's now at Stanford, that's mainly who I was with on most of the days. But I did stuff with Coach Diaz there, and then also Coach Diaz coached some of the special teams. So I think he maybe, I'm trying to remember what facet he might have done. Actually, the squad I was on, I think he did, like the punt team. So
Okay.
he's out there. So like I'm a part of that unit as a long snapper. So he's coaching me. Through that, because we didn't have a special teams coach when I was there at Texas. We didn't have that. We just had different coaches who would step up and take on a different phase of the special teams game. You had the guy, someone handled kickoff, someone handled kickoff return, punt return, someone handled the extra point field goal. And so I definitely worked with him a lot. And I had a great respect for Coach because, Coach Diaz, I think he was a lot like me. He wasn't a great athlete. No offense, Coach. But he's a hard, he just outworked everybody. He
Right.
outworked everybody, and he improvised, adapted, and overcame, and found a way. You know what I mean? And he comes from a different background, a different upbringing, and from a very different place than Texas football. But he rose the ranks, and he got there, and then and then moved on, and eventually became a head coach, and then he's down at the U where sort of it all started for him. So that's really cool. That's an amazing story, and
It is, man.
that resonates with me. And he was a young guy. We're not that far apart in age. I'm 39 now. I think he's early mid 40s, something like that.
Right. Right.
He looks 35, but
Yeah.
no,
Definitely has
but
the energy of a 35-year-old. That's for
oh
sure.
yeah,
Or
he's got plenty of
25-year-old.
energy, plenty of
Yeah.
passion. And so, yeah, so like, I mean, I think I related to him as a coach more than a lot of the other coaches. A lot of the other coaches were maybe these great college players at big programs, some of them even professional. And that was just a little bit different. He had a different route and a chip on his shoulder. So that was always, we always, and we had talks about stuff. He had great respect for, the men and women in uniform and the military as a whole. And so I mean, he's a very intelligent man. There's no doubt about that.
He really is. And thanks for detailing that, because I wondered, like, I got to ask him about that, because that's something that probably most Kane fans didn't know. And them listening to this now guys, Nate and Manny, they're buddies. So
That's right.
there's that.
He's got an open invite for me to come down there, and I haven't been able to make it work yet. I was going to try to go last year. It didn't happen. This year's obviously going to be very tough considering COVID-19 and everything, but
Right.
I will get out there. I want to get out there, and I want to go to a game and experience the whole deal, and just go to a practice and watch them in action. So it'll happen one of these days soon, I promise.
If you did, I hope you have a chance to reach out, because I'd love to personally meet you, shake your hand, and say thank you for everything that you've done, have done, and continue to do.
I'll swing a guest pass and just roll with me.
Cool. All right. So, like you said earlier, you and I do have something in common, in that we both will have earned our bachelor's degrees in our mid-30s. I finally have, like I said earlier, mine in December, and I can't wait. There are a few things about your college experience that I really want to ask you, because I can speak for the both of us and say that our quote unquote college experiences weren't, they weren't complete. They were completely different than that of a 17, 18-year-old. So with that being said,
Right.
you're from Cali. What made you use Texas? I'm sorry, what made you choose Texas?
Well, I used it too. I used it to,
You did.
to get my degrees, No.
You did.
I chose Texas because it was a very varied reasons, but one of them was the school. It's a great school, great university, and it's a state, big state university, public school, I should say, and also the football program and the legend, the legacy there. I mean, I knew I was going to obviously walk on. It was going to be a long shot, but I guess it was the same kind of feelings I had about the Seahawks and like why I chose that, the greater challenge. But also like I wanted to play for a historic program. And then Austin is just, it was, as an older student, and I think you can attest to this too, in Miami, like it would have been tough for me. I think it would have been harder for me in some ways to go to a small college town where it was just students, faculty, and then sort of, people that live there, they all work for the school somehow. And that's kind of the only thing going on.
Right.
I wanted diversity in the sense of like being able to go out and do different things and have different groups of friends that were maybe closer to my age and just kind of have that varied experience. And Austin was a good sized town for that. And I like new things. I never lived in Texas before. I'd pretty much just lived mostly in California where I grew up, and then a little bit in Colorado. And then in the military, I mean, I was in all kinds of different places, but I'd never lived in Texas. And it was just like, I mean, if I'm ever going to do this, now's the time. Texas is a big supporter of the veteran community and all that in the military. So I knew I'd have that support as well. And it's the only place I applied, really.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm glad. It obviously worked out. And okay, that's fair. I totally understand that. Did you live on campus or have like a roommate?
No.
There was a teammate? No?
I didn't. No, I did have roommates that were teammates. Actually, most of the time, I either lived by myself. I think a couple of the years I lived by myself. On a couple of the years, I had teammates that were roommates.
Okay.
I think one time I had 2 roommates, and the other time I think I had 4. We lived in like a big house.
Nice.
And yeah, I lived with the guys. I mean, I was 10 years older than all of them.
Right.
But, I get along with them great, man. Those were some of my closest friends from my time in Austin. Most of my buddies were guys I played football with, and they still are today, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, because I was like, okay, he's obviously was an older, student. I got to ask him about his living situation, because trying to put myself in your shoes, I would have felt kind of weird kind of living on campus or in a dorm or something like that. But, okay. Where's my next? Okay, here it is. Because of the fact that you did participate in the Red River rivalry, what other college rivalry games do you look forward to watching?
I love, because of my geographical connection to it growing up, Stanford Cal. And it's sort of an underrated one. They call it the game.
Yes, they do.
And, Stanford Cal is, you've got the band is on the field, the field, like all these famous, and growing up, I was always a Cal fan, actually, because my mom went to Cal. She went to Cal Berkeley. That's where she actually got her PhD from there.
Wow.
And as I've grown, I pull for Cal, of course, still, because that's always been, it was like a childhood thing. But I appreciate Stanford, and I pull for Stanford as well. Part of that's because, as I mentioned earlier, Dwayne Aquino, who is my defensive backs coach, he's now the defensive back coach at Stanford, and he had me out, and I was able to speak at the university to the team and some of the I think some of the parents or something like that and people that support the program, and and I got to meet the staff and Coach Shaw and everything like that, and that campus, Stanford's campus, is just gorgeous, man. I've never been to a more beautiful campus. It's unbelievable.
Really?
Okay. So when I watch that game, I still pull for Cal, because that's my childhood. You know what I mean? That's that nostalgia. But I love to see that. I love to see that rivalry, because it's a little bit unsung. I mean, everybody's obsessed, of course, understandably, with the Iron Bowl, and with it's the SEC, with Florida, Georgia, but for me, and of course, we used to have A&M in Texas as well. I only got to experience 2 of those, and then that ended forever. But for me, it's Cal Stanford. I think that's a really cool rivalry.
No, it is. It is. And like you said, it doesn't get much pub, but it doesn't mean it is less intense than any of the other ones that are out there. So, okay.
Right. I mean, the teams just, notably Cal, I should say, unfortunately, they just haven't been as, great as they once were, and even back not that long ago when they had, Marshawn Lynch and they had Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that was, I don't know, a dozen years ago, maybe a little bit more. But since then, it's been tough. And Stanford's had a lot of good years in that time, and they've gone to, I think, several Rose Bowls and, been a top 10 team multiple times where Cal hasn't. So it just hasn't had that same amount of the stakes being high at the end of the season where both teams are, fighting to win the Pac-12 as well, so.
Okay. No, I get that. One more question about your playing days. So, I mean, obviously, because of life experiences, you learned a lot before heading over to Austin. And you could probably teach some people, especially younger people, about a few things. Can you talk about your leadership role while you were at Austin for the Longhorns? And, I mean, your leadership role on that team, because when I think of a leader on a football team, most people envision a quarterback or maybe a defensive back, somebody like that. But you were none of those positions. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I knew I was going to be looked up to as a leader, especially by some of the coaches, in hopes, that I speak out and be a leader in the locker room and rally the guys, especially when they're tired and complaining about stuff just because of my military experience, and Coach Brown, Mac Brown, who was my coach there at Texas, he always, he wanted me to do that. And I kind of hesitated a bit because I felt like it was important, at least at first, I felt like it was important for me to play in the game.
Okay.
To like be, for me to have that voice. Like even though I'm in the locker room and I practice and all that, if I'm not in the trenches out on the field, even if it's just long snapping, which, it's not the same as playing quarterback or defensive back, but even if it's long snapping, I feel like I need to play meaningful snaps in the game to truly have that voice. And so I did step up a bit more once I got that opportunity. But I still, the type of leader that I am, it was more encouraging those other players that should be the main voice and leaders, stepping up from the quarterbacks to the defensive backs, encouraging them and getting behind them and helping them when they had questions about leadership and all that, so that they could take that responsibility on. Because, I mean, that's who's truly out there, 60, 80 snaps a game sometimes.
Exactly.
And they, and they've got those 10 other guys on the field that they're communicating with, and they got to trust one another, and they're shoulder to shoulder, across that line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And you not only got to beat the guy across from you, you got to beat the guy across from you for the guy next to you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So he can be successful, and that's how teams win. And so I thought it was more important for me to be a support role as it comes to leadership, and making sure that the guys that are playing those key positions, really have that microphone.
Totally understandable, because to kind of hear it from a guy that isn't on the field, that may be taken as like, who is this guy, especially by maybe someone that's 17 years old that may not be thinking further along the line. So good point with that. I get it.
Right.
Okay. I wanted to kind of move into questions about you being not in the media, but your leadership and your role socially, throughout the country, and everything that you've done, behind the scenes. And I know you're a busy guy with a bunch of work. So I want to get into that. With that being said, as someone that has that served in the Army as a Green Beret, and someone who knows what the flag means to him, was it difficult for you to tell Colin that kneeling would be a better option to protest police brutality and racial inequality, which is what he was trying to protest, than sitting was? Was that difficult for you? Because we know how you feel about the flag and standing for it.
Yeah, it was difficult, but I think it's important to understand that I didn't approach him with that idea in my head. When I wrote when I wrote that open letter to him, it was just explaining my experiences, but also saying, hey, look, it was more for the rest of the country. It wasn't necessarily for Colin. It was addressed to Colin, but it was for everybody to say, look, this is how I feel. This is what resonates with me when I hear those songs, when I hear the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, and when I see the flag flying. And a lot of that's due to my time in service. And, when a flag that flag specifically takes on a very different meaning to us.
Of course.
And it has a different type of reverence and respect. And, but at the same time, like, that's because of my experiences. That's why I feel that way. You have a different experience than me, so you may feel a different way. And there's nothing wrong with that. And at the end of the day, I took the oath to defend the Constitution, which includes the First Amendment and freedom of speech as part of that, freedom of expression. Right. And he was exercising those rights. So I fought for what he was doing, whether I agreed with it or not.
Right.
And I kind of wrote that in the letter. He reached out. We ended up meeting. And in our conversation, that's where he asked me, do you think there's a better way I could protest that won't offend people in the military? And I actually told him, no, there's not. There's going to be people. There's going to be people that are going to be offended no matter what. You know what I mean? There's going to be some people that feel that way. And I said, but if you're asking for my opinion, and I only speak for me, no one in the military, no veterans, just myself. I think being alongside your teammates, as we sort of alluded to on the field, being alongside your teammates on the sideline as well when the anthem's played it would be important. It's the most important thing because, you guys all feel differently about certain things. But when, between the white lines on the field and the 3 hours of whistles, you're a unit, you're together, you're a team. You got to fight for one another.
Of course.
And I said, and he said, well, I've already committed to not standing, And I said, well, then I think the only other option that makes sense is taking a knee. And it's seen as a sign of respect as far as I'm concerned. I think it's more powerful than sitting as well. And, if you're willing to do that, I would stand next to you to show people that I'm on board with what you're doing.
Right.
And that's where the kneeling started.
That was very powerful, especially I'm looking at your open letter right now, and I loved it, especially the way you ended it. I look forward to the day you're inspired to once again stand during our national anthem. I'll be standing right there next to you. Keep on trying. That's just, that moved me. That moved me because I look forward to that too. I I mean, everybody wants to get over and move on what's going on. So I thank you for writing that letter, and then obviously him reading it, and then you guys just having obviously an adult conversation about it and being honest with him, because obviously it's made waves, and we appreciate that. I'm sure he does, and I'm sure you did speaking to him. So I mean, it benefited everyone. But what do you tell those individuals that have expressed their disappointment toward you because you do understand why Colin decided to protest?
A lot of people in the veteran community are still hurt by it, and that they have every right to be. And a lot of them, I've been called a disgrace to the Green Beret by some.
Wow.
But there's also been a lot of people that have sort of changed their tune and opened their minds a bit, and that's more important to me anyway. Like I'll take a little abuse, verbal abuse. It doesn't. I got thick skin, man. I can handle it. And,
right.
And that also pertains to when people decide not to stand for the anthem. I got thick skin. It may hurt me when I see that, but it hurts me more that they don't feel like they count the same as I do, or they don't feel that same sense of equality. That hurts me more than the gesture of them taking a knee. And it hurts me more to hear people booing when the anthem's played because people are kneeling than it does the kneeling itself.
Wow.
And I don't want anybody to do anything out of obligation ever. I want people to do what they feel, you know what I mean? As long as they're not hurting anybody or doing something destructive, super destructive. And some people, I guess, would argue that is destructive. That's their opinion. But physically destructive, it is not. And so when I look at through that lens, I can live with that. I can handle that. As long as they're open to having conversations and listening to me and my opinions and why I feel a certain way, I'm good with it, man. I'm good with it. And as long as we're all working together to solve these problems, that's what it's all about. Like that's more important than those 2 minutes, during the national anthem, which, as I said, is a very special thing to me. What's more important is lives and unity and finding a way to solve these problems together. And a sign of unity, a great sign of unity to me today in this country, is two men or women that play for a team. When the anthem is played and one of them decides to take a knee and the other one next to them stands, with pride, that they still respect one another. And they still treat each other as a brother or sister, because that's how we feel. That they talk about the brotherhood and sisterhood in the locker rooms, that camaraderie. It's very true. So, like, if they can do that, and we can all do that as a country, we can get past that. We can be bigger, and we can act like adults and have these conversations, and just all be better, all do better together.
Amen to that. Amen to that. You put it together, perfectly. Thanks for breaking it down that way for everyone, whether, they disagree with either side or whatnot. But, okay. So let me ask you this. I didn't serve, Colin didn't serve, but he still has respect for it, because I think he, in your talk, or he had revealed that he has family members that served in either in law enforcement or, in the armed forces. But what do you say to those that still don't understand why certain athletes are choosing to kneel during the anthem in 2020? If somebody approached you about that, what do you say to them?
What is it? Would you ask again? Sorry, cut out.
Well, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just saying, what if somebody approached you and, and asked you, how is it that you can support, something like that? What do you say to those that still don't understand why certain athletes are doing what they're doing during those 2 minutes in 2020? This was, years ago that this first happened. What do you say to those individuals?
I just say, listen to them, and if you don't hear what they're saying, then just Google it, man. It's all over the place. Go back and watch. There's an 18-minute conversation interview that Colin Kaepernick gave after the first time that he was recognized as sitting on the bench in protest, right? And it was in a locker room. It's not hard to find. Just look up first interview with Colin Kaepernick after, protest. And it's like 18 minutes long or so. And he talks about how it's not against the military. He talks about why he's doing it. Not everything he says in that interview I agree with. And not everything he's worn I think is the right thing to do. And, he's said things in the past like, I won't vote for a system that is oppressive. And I think that voting is very important personally.
All right.
So there's a lot of things that he has said and done in the past and still says and does today that I don't agree with. And that's okay. Right. You know what I mean? But if you listen to the entire message of what he's talking about, there's a lot of stuff in there that I do agree with. And I think that there's a lot of stuff in there that no matter where you stand politically, you probably would agree with at some level, some of the things. And so if you just give someone a chance and hear them out, maybe you can at least relax and understand why. You might not agree, but at least you understand why and where that's coming from. And I think that is an important lesson, not just with the Colin Kaepernick situation, but with everybody, where we're just not listening. We're just not really hearing somebody. We're seeing an image, or we're reading a headline, or getting a soundbite, and we're making a decision or a judgment about that individual as a human being off that one thing, about who they are and what they're all about. And that's just not fair.
Very true. Very true. And it's just, like you said, about listening, having a willingness to have an open mind and, follow that conversation up with that same mindset, that same energy. So, okay. Moving past that, thank you, because I really just wanted to ask you those couple of things. And I got two more questions for, like I said, I know you busy.
Yeah, we got to jump soon, but we got it. We got to hit them.
Okay, cool. Did you ever have a chance to meet or speak to Pat Tillman?
I didn't, and I wish I would have been able to. That would have been really cool, because one of the reasons I joined the military was because I just, or I guess one of the reasons I even started. Excuse me, I need a glass of water.
Take your time.
One of the reasons I even considered started to think about joining the military was because of Pat Tillman. After he had passed away, and I heard his story,
right, and
read about him and what he stood for and what he was all about, and he was a different cat. He was a really out there cat, but he also felt very fortunate and almost guilty for being born in America,
Right.
and having all the opportunities that we have here. And he wanted to go fight for his country. And, he had a complicated time in service as well, and the details of his death were complicated in the way that it was misrepresented initially.
Yes.
But beyond all that, when I go back to talking about listening to interviews, go back and watch interviews of Pat Tillman after he made that decision to join and why he did it. And you'll get chills, man. I don't care who you are, just with the passion that he had, and how much he felt like it was his duty. It was an honor for him to give up this, multi-million-dollar contract and go do what he did, sacrifice, ultimately, paying the ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
And he's a hero and a legend. And I never got to meet him, but hopefully I'll get to meet him on the other side.
That'll for sure happen. That'll for sure. God bless his soul. Rest in peace. Super duper role model, and obviously influenced you in some way. So I got one more question, and thanks for sticking around with me, because trust me, this means a lot. But I reached out to somebody we follow each other on Twitter, and he served in the military, and he's the first person I thought of once you and I got in contact. So I asked him, I said, look, I'm going to talk to Nate. Don't tell anyone. But if you had a chance to ask him anything, what would it be? So I'm reading this verbatim. His name is Brian. So Brian says, as someone who reached the pinnacle of both the Army as a Green Beret, which is almost, he says, which is almost as good as being a Marine, laugh out loud, and the pinnacle of football, making an NFL roster. If there was one piece of advice that you could give young men or women that are pursuing a career in either the military or sports that translates well into both fields as far as achieving success, what would it be?
It would be that the only real limitations that exist in life are the ones that we put on ourselves. And you're going to hear a lot of negative stuff from people that are too afraid to try what you're going to try to do, no matter what that thing is. It doesn't have to be football or the military. It could be anything.
Uh-huh.
There's going to be naysayers and people that tell you, oh, you can't do that because of this. And no, that's not possible because of that. I'm not saying don't listen to them. I'm saying do listen to them, actually, and use that as motivation, and go prove them wrong. And prove yourself wrong when you have doubts about yourself, because I have plenty of doubts about myself, and I still do today. There's things I think I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough,
Right.
Whatever. And but if I just keep working every day, and I try to get a little bit better, and I sacrifice more time and energy to that thing that I love, more time and energy than anybody else, eventually you start to see results. You just have to stick with it. There's so many people that just quit. They call it self-select in the military. They self-select out, because they get a little bit of adversity and things start to get a little bit hard.
Wow.
And they just think, well, this is how it's always going to be. This sucks. And they just quit. And then they live with the regret. And my biggest fear is regret. And so it's just not an option for me. You know what I mean? I'm just going to keep going. And I actually, once you learn, people say embrace the grind, and a lot of people I don't think really understand what that means. It doesn't mean just be okay with the fact that life is hard right now or whatever. I think it means finding ways to enjoy that moment.
Exactly.
Enjoy that, I've climbed a few mountains in my day, right? I just did Mount Whitney last week. It's the highest mountain in the continental U.S. And it sucked. It was hard, man. But when I look back on that journey, being at the top was cool. It was beautiful views. It felt great. But the best part of it was the hardest uphill climb, where all those voices in my head were telling me, oh man, like this hurts, this sucks, like you might not make it up there, your muscles are sore, you don't feel that? And but I listened to them, I heard them, but I just didn't pay attention to them. I didn't let them dictate my next step. I took the next step anyway. And and that's what I look back on and remember, and I'm proud of. I'm proud of the time and some of the hardest times I had in the military. I'm proud of grinding through a training camp on the scout team at Texas, and all those things. So that's what I look back on, and that's what I remember. And I think that's something to focus on and understand, because you're going to regret quitting. I promise you that.
Of course.
I promise you that. If it's something you truly love, you're going to regret it. You might lie and act like you're not, like you're okay with it, but you're going to end up being that person that's telling everybody else they can't do things.
Nate, man, that again, I find myself agreeing with you like throughout this whole conversation, but that struggle, that's what makes the top so much more enjoyable, because you feel like I did it despite this, despite the soreness, despite the negative, voices on the outside. That the struggle makes, embracing the struggle makes the outcome a lot sweeter, if you ask me. So I hear you on that. But Nate, man, you truly are an inspiration, whether you want to believe that or not. Thank you so much for the things that you have said and done, the things that you do and are doing, and for the things that you plan to do and continue to do for this country, and everything else, in between. We really appreciate your voice. We really appreciate your passion, and we're glad to have you around, man. It's been great talking to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on. And I hope we have a season this year. That's all I got to say. I miss football.
I hear you about that, man, especially college football. But thank you so much. Stay safe, brother. And although we're not doing a video right now, I am standing right here, and I'm saluting you, man. I just want to let you know that you're greatly appreciated.
I appreciate that. I salute you right back.
Amen, brother. Stay safe and take care, okay? Wear a mask. #wear a mask.
You too.
All right.
See ya.
Take care.